My name is Ashton Ellett. I'm an advanced PhD candidate in history. I specialize in Southern history, Georgia history, modern United States history, and politics.
So, in the email, you said that a socioeconomic divide in Athens dated back to slavery and a socioeconomic system fostered by an agrarian economy. Would you like to elaborate on that?
Athens, Georgia is not unique in that racial and economic divides date back to the economic and cultural systems, social systems that emerged both before the Civil War and after the Civil War. Taking the years after the Civil War, there was a push by economic elites, government elites, largely white, to foster and create an economic system based on controllable labor. And part of that was the Jim Crow system, which was not just for economic purposes, but for social control and things like that. But moving on into the early 20th century and the early decades, you have an economy based on either agriculture or low-skill manufacturing. So in the areas around Athens, you had farmland, farm labor, sharecropping, tenancy, things like that. In the early 20th century, the major industrial economy in Athens, if you can call it that, was based on things like textiles, timber mills, very, very low-skill, low-wage labor based on an extractive industry. It's not until World War II and the New Deal, before that in the 1930s, where you have a shifting economy because of declining agricultural prices, more beneficial, or rather federal policies that encourage agricultural laborers to move off the land towards the cities, both in Georgia and then also moving out of the South. But by World War II, you have a massive influx of industry into the South, mainly in places like Atlanta, Cobb County, other cities. But here in Athens, what you saw was the growth of sort of outside-owned manufacturing that replaced sort of the mills and older industries that had been in place since the late 19th and early 20th century. So that economic development that begins during the 1940s, 1950s, and into the 1960s is very uneven. And like many workplaces in the South, they were segregated. Well-paying jobs, jobs that offered opportunities for advancement, were generally whites only. African-American labor was usually consigned to entry-level positions, low-skill labor positions, custodians, clerks, things like that. So it's really a combination of economics, politics. Most African Americans couldn't vote in the South in large numbers until the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of 1965. That's the segregated society that emerged out of slavery, out of Jim Crow, that you had a Southern society, black and white, separate and unequal, and that divide still lingers. So what maintains this socioeconomic divide? If we're talking about the historical origins are obviously on the one hand, but you also have the structure of Athens' modern economy, which is based no longer on industry. Most of the industry has either left or downsized. Instead, what you have is an economy based on low-wage service jobs. Service economy is food service, bars, clubs, retail, like stores, and then the university and other government jobs. Clark County, School District, University of Georgia. Your major private employers would be like the healthcare system, St. Mary's, Athens Regional, Piedmont Regional. And why that matters is because in a town like Athens that is dominated in many ways by the university, you have a transient population in need of service jobs, and you have an excess of labor. So Athens tends to have a lower unemployment rate than the state average, much lower than places in like Middle and South Georgia. But it's the wage base, wealth of the county is usually below, especially below metropolitan Atlanta, for example. So, here on the university, if you did a study of jobs based on race, you would find that African Americans, other minority groups, tend to predominate in positions like custodial work, labor, cooks, things like that. And in many ways, the policies, the wage policies, the wage scales, reinforce the wage discrepancies between whites and blacks. Now, that's not the only reason, of course.
Wage policies. What do you mean?
In terms of wages, it's how much money you're paid per hour, how many hours you can work, whether there are benefits attached to that, vary depending on jobs on campus. Not every job is benefits bearing, things like that.